So when we went to sign the contract over for the parking space, he's like, yeah, my family owns like these other plots. Should I just include these as well?
And for the same price.
For the same price.
Living in another country, it just really changes you too, I've noticed. It causes you almost like lose that sense of, man, where do I really belong? And
certainly miss seeing my family. There's certain foods, of course, that I'd like to eat. Little
tortillas, man. I want Mexican food.
That's the one I'm just thinking of.
You've been in Japan since 2011?
2011, yeah. I came here actually in 2010. I did wolfing. Yeah. I did wolfing in a place called Canadian Farm in Nagano. From 2010, from June till August.
Wow, so up in the mountains.
Yeah, in like Chinoshi, in a place called Haramura, near this mountain called Yatsugatake. And you could see like the Northern Alps like every single day. Whoa. We would work on these, we would like, doing wolfing, like you start the day about 6 o'clock and you go to the lettuce fields and we would weed around the lettuces and you could get this really awesome views of like the Northern Alps. And then we'd come back and then we would, we'd have breakfast and then whatever the project was for the day. So I did that for two and a half months. One of the big projects we did there was we tore down an old Japanese house. Like as you've seen, like there's all these abandoned houses. Well, this one had caught on fire.
Wow.
And all that wood could be reclaimed. It turned out that with that reclaimed wood, we used that reclaimed wood and they were going to rebuild it for a farm house, like a barn in California, in Temecula.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All the way over there.
Yeah, they were going to ship it. Because there's have you ever been to Nijiya Market?
Yeah, I've heard
like the Japanese supermarket
in
chain in California.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah,
San Diego.
Yeah, they have a farm in Temecula, like outside of LA, I guess.
I didn't know that.
Temecula's outside. I think it's outside of LA.
Interesting.
So they have a farm like up on this hill, and so I was still in undergrad, and I had my spring break, and I was like, well, I left Japan. I had applied for this English teaching program, and I had some spring break time, and I was like, oh, I actually got my ass kicked at that farm too, because I'd never worked on a farm or done any kind of like manual labor or anything like that.
Okay.
So I got my ass kicked over there, and I was like, oh, I'd like to go do that again. Like that was really hard. Like, but I learned a lot from those Japanese guys, and the boss is just amazing. He's really, he's an artist, but he like makes these really intricate cabins and things. So I went there in 2011 in March, and I had applied for the teaching program as well, like the week before. Did my interview at the embassy, and then when I got there, it was like March 7th or 8th, and we were working 2 days, and then like sure enough, like the Fukushima disaster happened.
Wow, so you're here.
And like I wasn't in Japan at the time. We were in California rebuilding the house for the Nijiya Market.
Wow.
And it like, seeing their reaction, of course they couldn't contact their family. We were watching we didn't have internet or TV or anything out at the farm because it was like an off-grid site.
Wow.
I think there was a few generators for us to charge like our phones and things. But we watched it all from my iPhone. We watched it all from my smartphone.
Oh my god!
Like the coverage of.
It was some of the most shocking footage I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's just like
the houses and everything just moving by the water.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, and so and at that time, like because it was one of the major power sources for like all of Eastern Japan, you couldn't get in touch with people. The electricity wasn't working, cell phone towers weren't working, so they couldn't get in touch with their families.
My goodness.
And we watched it, and then a few weeks, I went back, and I finished my part of the job, and we went back. I went back to North Carolina to go back to school at App State, and I got the email from the embassy. The embassy said, "Yeah, you didn't get into the program. You're on the B list." But of course, because of this disaster, and as news started to spread, there was a lot of concern about nuclear radiation and fallout, and and also just like, I think the whole situation, I mean, in a lot of parts of Japan, there was a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of English teachers and foreigners, they left.
They left, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Japanese, like, we're calling them, of course, foreigner is gaijin in Japan. They were calling it flyjin, right?
Flyjin.
Because they were all flying out of the country.
That's funny.
But I mean, when you don't know and you don't know what's happening, and there is this uncertainty.
And there's a big scare too about radiation. Is the food safe to eat?
Exactly. There's a lot of this happening. So of course, like, people move, when there's disaster. People, when there's any kind of thing, people migrate out of a hard or, tough situation. So in that case, I can understand, their point. But in Japan, I mean, Japan doesn't really have anywhere to go. You have to stay in the country for the most part. Most people did, and then, but we did see a lot of people move actually from east to western Japan or to other parts of Japan after that situation too. Or we also saw a lot of people move out of urban areas because, and so there was this kind of movement towards more rural areas and getting back to nature in some sense.
So that happened in Japan too, then.
Yeah, in Japan.
There's somewhat of a movement. I mean,
somewhat.
Nowhere near like what's happening in the United States right now.
No.
Where, like, I think probably millions have left cities.
Right, especially after Corona, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was big.
That was, any kind of disaster, any kind of, shock to the system, changes people. It forces them to make new decisions or sometimes hard decisions, but
pain will do that.
Yeah. And people didn't like, what was going on, and maybe they wanted a bit more control of their lives. I don't know, or like a more sense of control over their lives. I don't know. Sometimes, because
sometimes it's an illusion, kind of. That we do have control.
Yeah, especially I mean with nature, like we don't have really many earthquakes here, and but we do get like typhoons, and when the wind blows really hard, like nothing I can do. Like I mean, I'm not gonna like I can't hold on to the greenhouse, and hopefully it doesn't blow out. But this happens too. Wild boars coming into the farm happens too.
So then you obviously came back to Japan. So what have you liked about Japan so much that made you want to come here and just stay and actually stay?
Yeah. Well, I like my property. I like my farm. I mean, I think we've toured around it today. The view of the sea. I mean, I don't think I would be able to afford this in the States not as easily.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cheap, it was so cheap, and lifestyle, even though the yen now is, when I first got here, the yen was actually really good so sending money home was great, but the lifestyle too is like, it's very affordable. The potential to expand or grow more food is always on the horizon. I've had multiple people come to me and ask me, do I want property or do I want to use this land?
Wow.
And
that's as a foreigner. Japanese people are coming to you.
It's Japanese people are coming to me now and asking me.
Wow.
I think initially where I was going to say you should park, when we bought the parking space over there, I had been on a small Japanese TV program at one point, and they saw that I was the owner of that land saw that I was farming. So I never even met the lady, but she had heard that I was interested in farming through this TV program. So when we went to sign the contract over for the parking space, it was her family's house originally. She was like, "Yeah, my family owns like these other plots. Should I just include these as well?" And
for the same price.
For the same price.
Because they just don't want the tax burden.
Yeah, the tax burden. And it's forested land. And actually that place did have, there was a big landslide in 2017. We had this huge rain storm come through in the rainy season that washed out a big chunk of the land above that. The government came through and built a huge dam afterwards. But now it's safe. It's an okay space, but yeah, there's land like that. If you go further into, since we're on an island, if you go further into the main island of Honshu, or the main part of Japan, there's lots of land, lots of farmland, lots of rice fields and terraces that you could potentially either rent or purchase. You do need to register as a farmer in Japan. So I'm registered as a farmer because I've been renting or using farmland for
Because
years.
I heard that as a foreigner, you can't just buy farmland.
You can't. You can buy land. You can buy houses, but with farmland you need to register as a farmer.
And then you're able to get access.
Yeah, but that's also changing a little bit too because Japan has so much excess farmland,
and nobody wants to farm.
And nobody wants to farm. I think it's like what 1.5% of the population of 120 million is farming.
Yeah.
But whether they're full-time farming or not, that's probably only like half. So it's like 700,000 people are probably full-time farmers, maybe a million. And then we don't have enough labor.
And that's dwindling.
Yeah.
Because it's like the average age is 68.
Yeah.
I think for farmers here. So they're,
That's it.
How much longer do they have to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation here.
Yeah. And in the US, I think the average age is about 64, 65, but at the size and scale they're doing it, I mean.
And they're sitting in a tractor.
Yeah. And that's a huge swaths of land where you've seen the farms. They're all tiny. I mean, I don't know, what's the biggest farm you think you've been to, like in terms of acreage?
In Japan, just Kajiya's farm probably is the biggest.
Yeah. But it's not that much. Big.
I mean, 5 acres, 5 to 10 acres is probably a bigger farm here, I think.
Yeah, that's a big farm, 5 to 10 acres. So we're on like, I think what you've probably seen is like a quarter or an eighth of an acre. But in total, like if you combine all the land we've got, it's like 2 acres, I think. But that includes like the mountain, and, like, the other properties. What do I like about Japan? Well,
like do you want to spend the rest of your life here? You think?
Yeah, I don't.
It's too hard to look into the future.
It's really hard to know. I mean, I think I've got a pretty good balance going on between the farm and school, and lifestyle is really important. Being able to farm without debt is
it's cool.
Great, right? Like that's what I think a lot of people. Maybe I don't know how old you are, but we're probably about the same age.
I'm 37.
36. So, yeah, so we want to try to get out of,
Definitely.
Get out of debt and
you it's easier to live. You don't have like all this hanging over the top of you. Like you don't have to make that much money to have a great life.
Right.
And
right.
I really like that too.
Yeah.
Not the pressure of like having to, I got to make $10,000 a month to be able to survive. Like if you live in California, you kind of need to make that much if you really want to have a house and be able to do it. So.
But in Japan, that's not really, that important. I mean, and it's not really necessary. I mean, because rent and land is relatively cheap. Food is actually relatively cheap too. I mean, I'm sure even if you're going out to eat, going out to lunch, it's $7. $7
$7 to $10.
Yeah.
You can get a good meal, maybe a beer or some other like tea or coffee with it. Yeah, it's nice.
So there's that, and then at the same time, I mean, there's a lot more with agriculture and what we're doing. Like there's still a lot more potential. There's a lot of different like value streams or places we could be going back to like with the farm, like doing maybe tours, having people over, workshops, events. Those are all possibilities, and those are things that we've actually trialed and done in the past and have had success with. So yeah, since I own the land here, like I'm never gonna. I don't think I would ever sell it or get rid of it. There's no need to.
I heard property taxes are pretty low here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like compared to America.
Yeah. Yeah. Property tax.
How much how much is it a year?
I think it's like $200 or $300 for this property.
Yeah, that's like unheard of.
Yeah, because this is
pretty cool.
Because this is technically farmland.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons. I think a little piece of it is residential, but it's kind of in a gray zone. But already because we're not located to any business zones, located close to any business or commercial zones, yeah, it's very, very cheap. But if you compare that to being in like East Onamichi, Higashi Onamichi, which is just in town, it's much more expensive.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that with our my friend who's a carpenter a few months ago. He was saying it's pretty high, but yeah, here in the farmland, it's very, very cheap. The property tax now. Now that I've got these different properties, though, it's altogether it's probably more than probably close to $400 or $500 now, because I think I own like 20 different addresses.
Little parcels.
Little pieces and forest. And
was that process easy to?
Pretty easy, yeah. Yeah, it was easy, yeah. I think we hired lawyers to do this.
Interesting. So yeah, it's not that scary, I guess. Like property rights here are really good, and there's not like scams going on, and like maybe in other countries that might happen. But
yeah, not really. I mean, there are.
I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, I felt like the real estate agent wasn't the best this past time, especially with this parking lot. Like there was a well that was kind of just lightly covered, so if it rains really heavily, sometimes it overflows. So I don't know, there was a little bit of that, but nothing like, yeah. And like this place I've got my citrus going on like where your truck is, that area, that was free. We just had to pay for the name change, which cost maybe $1,500.
Okay.
So, and that would be another spot you could probably put like a little cabin or shed on, and probably live over there as well. I mean, it's all
interesting.
Yeah. Same with the hauler, the property over.
Is there like permitting or things like this? Can you just kind of do what you want?
You do need to go through City Hall depending on what you're building or what's happening. Yeah, you need to go through them. I don't know necessarily if
you're gonna you just build a tool shed, you don't have to ask permission for that.
I think it depends on the size. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, but it's pretty. I mean, it's kind of gray, like it's kind of. Well, I think we're going to be getting ready to build something, maybe in the entrance here where our greenhouse. We're next to our greenhouse, a smaller building, because I just need a little bit more space for, like post harvest and processing of stuff. I want to build out something soon, so maybe we'll have to go through some permits with that.
Yeah. Interesting. So in general, that's pretty good experience, I guess, as a foreigner buying land and having Japanese neighbors.
Yeah, well, that can be a little bit challenging too. Yeah. I think
knowing Japanese probably helps a bit.
Yeah. I studied in undergrad. I studied in 2008 to 2011 at App State. But just on a whim, like I didn't expect to actually come and live in Japan.
Right.
It was offered at the university. Yeah. And it wasn't Spanish. So I had studied Spanish in high school and junior high school. So just an opportunity to study something new or different.
That's what I did in college too. Yeah. Because you had to do another language.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, let's try.
I
did Japanese.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so you speak a little
bit. Yeah. But it's been so long that I was like, what? I graduated in.
Where'd you go to school?
Grossmont College in San Diego, and then I went to San Diego State.
Okay. And then in San Diego State, where you did Japanese?
Yeah, this is like 16 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Because when I went to App State, they offered Japanese. Like I went to a smaller 2-year school at first, Young Harris College, and then transferred to App State. And it was like, oh, that sounds good or interesting. Because I was interested. I wasn't really into like anime or manga or anything.
Yeah, I wasn't that guy either.
Yeah, but I liked. I worked in an outdoor store in Georgia on the Appalachian Trail, and we sold a lot of like Montbell, like outdoor goods. And I was like driving a Subaru, and well, Japanese products are really amazing. Like their outdoor products, like Snow Peak, and like, these things are like built to last a long time, and I guess I'd always had a little bit of Japanese influence. But it was App State's sustainable ag program too. Fukuoka Masanobu, the One Straw Revolution book came out. Yeah. That was in like Sustainable Ag 101 or first class.
That's cool they had you read that. That's a really, really good book.
Yeah, it's really good. And so Fukuoka's book was like, wait, what? Like natural farming, do nothing farming. Oh, no way. Like that doesn't exist. Like I had always imagined there was just all this effort and requirement. But then when I came here and started farming too, and then I did start letting stuff like go to seed or go to flower, just, chop and drop or let stuff kind of come back every year. I'm like, yeah, he was right. It does work. Like, if you go up in the fall or in the winter and spring, the whole top will be covered with like canola or kale or daikon flowers because I have a lot of stuff that I let go to seed. And it's not going to germinate when it's this hot, but when you get those first fall rains, they'll start to pop out, and I will not have needed to plant it or will not have needed to seed it.
That's a good feeling.
And that's amazing. Like the fact that I can literally walk out my doorstep and there's food at my feet, like it's everywhere.
That's pretty cool.
And so Fukuoka was right when he said that. So in that sense too, living in Japan and the climate is suitable for this kind of way or method of farming, and it works. I think it does work, but I wouldn't say it works in the beginning, and it wasn't like that in the beginning at all. So like the initial effort, the initial like 2-3 years to get established, I think is really probably the most pivotal, and then from there you can you can start to like play around and then establish how you want to do things. But to do that 100% like as a market gardener or as like somebody who wants to sell their produce, I think it becomes more challenging to do that. So that's why like around the farm, on this like flatter part, we've got our beds established and we've got the property more laid out and built out.
Living in another country, it just really changes you too, I've noticed. I mean, it's like now because I lived in Korea for 2 years, and now we're like traveling around the world or Asia for the next year. It just makes you feel like, where's my home now? Because America doesn't feel like home, or it hasn't felt like home to me for a while. I mean, when I moved to Tennessee, I felt more at home because that culture and that lifestyle is more my speed, I guess, than California. But at that same time, it's like it causes you almost to like lose that sense of, where do I really belong? And but it's like it's kind of fun at the same time. Like being the foreigner in another country like has a fun feeling to it too. It feels like a big adventure. And
there's like one of my favorite I think it's like an Apple iTunes like playlist. It's called Permanent Vacation that I think I found like 3 or 4 years ago. And it feels like that sometimes. It feels like I'm on permanent vacation. Like, I mean, and living at the beach and living at the sea, like, because I didn't grow up around that. So you're always in this experience, having that experience of like every day's kind of new. And I went home, and I go home probably every 2 or 3 years. But being at home, being in Athens, my family, they have their own work, they run their own businesses, and they're usually working, like even when I'm back there on holiday. So I'm just kind of like the fly on the wall. Like I'm not working or doing anything.
You don't have a life there.
I don't have a life there.
Hanging out.
I'm just hanging out. And the last few times I've gone there, it was just like hanging out, like, and a little boring. I don't know, because there's just, I mean, living on a farm or doing this thing in Japan, there's always something going on, and it's a much more familiar. Going back home, there's some things that are really new, but then there's some things that I'm, you make those comparisons like, well, in Japan, like, like this is my life over here, and then it's also lifestyle too, because I do like to spend a lot of time outside. My house and my lifestyle here is set up that way. My parents and my family don't spend a lot of time outside, and I'm usually there in winter anyway, so it's a bit not that cold in Athens, but. I mean, when I finish work, I'll spend time around the fire. I'll be outside there. I'll go to the sea, go swimming. I mean, this is like every day for me. And whereas at home, it's a lot more. When you finish work, it's more sitting around the TV, and
you go back to your house and go inside, and there's not as much to do.
And it's just watching TV. Which is That's okay, but
yeah, it's a way more fulfilling way of living, obviously.
Yeah, I feel yeah.
I mean, not for everybody, but yeah, I mean, I feel that way too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I really enjoy just like the American, politics, and just like whatever, whatever you think about politics, it's just a constant bombardment of the next news story, the next nightmare, the next thing. And like, I love kind of cutting off from that. It's like, because in Japan, like Japanese politics and Japanese people don't care that much about politics. It's like,
they really don't. No.
Like, they're not fighting about this or that. Like, everyone's just living their life. And in other places in Asia too, I feel like it's like that too. I really, really like that. Because America's just now, it's just become this big fight constantly, and like I'm just sick of it.
Yeah, it's every time I've gone home, like it's always building up for the next election.
Yeah,
which means like everybody's constantly either fighting or upset about something,
and just obsessed with it.
Yeah,
and just so.
I think the last 2 times I've been there, it was like they were building up towards this last Christmas, and then 3-4 years ago it was like governor elections, and it's always around
this. Always something too.
Yeah, and it doesn't really end. And so here, and that's one thing I like about Japan. At the same time, though, we had a local election here in the town, and actually it split the town in half, kind of 50-50.
Oh, interesting.
The guy that we were kind of for, and as a foreigner, I can't vote.
Right.
But we were for, lost by like 300 votes. So, but again, not as many people came out. I mean, I guess it'd be about the same in the States, like 50%, 60% came out to vote in the local mayoral election. But, as a foreigner, we don't really have those. We can't vote. We can't hold office.
Right.
So we do have to take a step back from it, and we're not as involved. Which can be nice, but then I do wish we could, because I think there's a lot of potential in Japan still to maybe change or do some things differently. But then as foreigners, like maybe we have to kind of let a lot of that go, because that's not really, maybe that's not.
It's a different thing here, because in Japan it's Japanese people, and traditionally it's always been Japanese people, one culture, one mind. Whereas in America, it's always been mostly the mindset of immigrant culture, and everybody can come here and have a say, and the melting pot idea, which is just a totally different thing. I mean, in America you can be a dual citizen and be in office, which is kind of a crazy concept. I know in Korea, you can only be Korean. You can't even have a dual citizenship as a citizen, let alone a politician. So, yeah, it's just it's interesting thinking about how, do you let foreigners come in and have an influence in your country and then change things? And now it becomes less like Japan, and it's interesting getting to experience a country who thinks totally different than like the West thinks about immigration and all this, where the foreigner doesn't really have a say, or you must adapt to Japan. You become Japanese. You must learn Japanese.
Yeah, you learn the language, learn like customs.
Nothing's translated for you.
Yeah.
Like in California, the driver's license test is translated into 80 languages or so, whatever it is. Like. They cater to you, but here it's not like that. No. And
there's like a higher expectation to get to assimilate into the country, and I think that's why some people maybe don't.
That's what
stay, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, and to stay is a huge commitment, and you're often asked. It's like, I'm often asked, like, well, where are you from? How long have you been here? And do you go home?
Yeah.
When are you going home? Kind of things. And, you must miss home. And it's like, I mean, I do. I miss, certainly miss seeing my family. There's certain foods, of course, that I'd like to eat or do eat. And that's becoming more and more available now. Even at like supermarkets, I see more imported foods and things. It's not little
tortillas, man. I want Mexican food.
That's the one I'm just thinking of. So the local supermarket on this island has been bringing in tortillas for the last 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And every time I go, I buy like 5 packs or 3 packs of the tortillas. The last 3 weeks, no tortillas.
Oh, no.
And they've got chapati, not the same. It's just like, and the chapati has become a big mess because it's like fresh. It's like, it's not cooked yet. So like, I've been trying to make the same thing with the chapati, and it's just not the same. But the tortillas, so I'm getting like, yeah, I was buying 3 or 4 or 5 packs, and you would think if I bought more and more, they would keep it coming. But I check every single week. Are they back in the frozen food section? It's another reason I started growing wheat here too, because I was making some of my own flour tortillas, and if we don't get any more tortillas, then I'm gonna start making my own tortillas again. Because yeah, I like I do miss that kind of like Tex-Mex kind of. Yeah, and being able to go to the supermarket and make wraps and stuff. And the funniest thing, so like too, is my ex-wife. That's what they sell at the restaurant at the cafe.
Oh, nice.
She makes tortilla wraps. So it's like, sometimes I wonder, like, did I just like manifest all this to happen? It's like the closest cafe makes burritos on my island. Like, it took me like 13 years to get to that point, because that was one of the things. If I go to Hiroshima City, or if I go into town, maybe I'll go to a place to get Mexican food or Tex-Mex or something, because
it's funny the things we end up missing, you know, or
that and like barbecue, but then having a Weber and smoking wild boar.
That's cool.
That's at least once a month.
Oh,
maybe
wow.
If not,
that's cool.
Every 2 or 3 weeks, we're smoking wild boar and make like one big leg, and then that's meat for the week.
That's super cool.
So that's
how do you get the boar? You trap it, or
so yeah, we had the license. I've got 2 traps. I've got one leg trap and then one cage trap. Wow. And I didn't do any hunting when I was living in America, but probably the first year or so living here, local hunter gave me some boar, and it was all right. Like, it was grilled on a Japanese typical like open top grill. But then when I started living here, I bought a grill with a lid on it, and then doing low heat, slow cooking, and yeah, we started processing ourselves.
Cool.
I learned from the local hunters here how to process, how to
That's so cool. They showed you.
Yeah, they showed me the whole thing, and we did that. We practiced maybe 3 or 4 times until I could get comfortable enough to do it myself. And now that I can do that, last year we processed our male sheep and a female lamb for the first time too. So we're putting away meat like that.
So cool.
So it's like year by year you're learning like these new skills and these new experiences, and yeah, it's like the local oji-sans, the local uncles, you know, bringing you in and teaching you how to do these things is really great. I didn't have that in Georgia and in Athens, and
it's like people are more likely to, like, I don't know, help you out or teach you things or show you things. You know, there's some Japanese people that like, get away from me, foreigner. Like, that goes on too. But for the most part, it's all really good interactions, actually. In Japan.
Yeah, it's what, probably 99% of the time. And you know,
or you don't hear them say it. They might think it, but they're not going to bother you.
Yeah, they're not going to bother you. Yeah, and living here, I have had some, you know, challenges, like live with my neighbors. Partly that was, you know, a good part of that was on me. You know, I came in here thinking, oh, I'm a foreigner, maybe I can change stuff. I can say something and put some pressure on my neighbor. I was pretty concerned about Roundup use. I think, it's pretty commonly used all across the country. That's the reality. I mean, you go to any home center or like Home Depot like shop, and it's like the first thing that's sold right when you walk in the shop. So, and in this season, it's used too much. Now, whether it has like a really big impact on humans or not, I know there's like still a lot of debate. I know there's been a lot of court cases that says some people have, you know,
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And have gotten lymphoma from it. So But Japanese people don't have that. They're not getting that information. They don't see that in their news or in the media.
In America too, all my neighbors spray it too.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you doing, man? Like, don't you know what that is?" And they have no concept of it. But
no concept. So I think this is something where, but there's a way of going about like and sharing some of the information with the people with your neighbors or what it does. We do know it does impact like amphibians and fish, and we're right next to the sea. Also probably birds as well, because they're going to come in and eat some of the leaf off or the bugs from the weeds. So maybe we need to rethink some of these things. And with my neighbors too, I'm often asked to cut certain plants back or trees back, and that caused a little bit of fighting, a little bit of like distancing at first, but then over time, I mean, they've seen me, when it's hot, when it's something happens. There are times where they've said thank you for cutting the tree, or thank you for doing that, or there is an exchange. Hey, I've got a lot of beans, I've got a lot of cucumbers. We'll exchange, we'll trade. So I have a lot of neighbors like that, and then I've got even older neighbors in their 80s who we're constantly exchanging what to grow, when to plant. I'll bring over some herbs that maybe they typically wouldn't grow in their Japanese garden or in their vegetable garden. So we're exchanging in that way, which is really great. That's kind of one of the advantages of being here. And then this is rural, like Fukushima is rural, but I'm a 20-minute bike ride or 10-minute car ride into the city, into Onomichi, and I really like the city of Onomichi too. It's like a small Kyoto, they say. So a lot of temples, a lot of history. Wasn't really impacted by World War II in the same way that a lot of the neighboring cities were. So there wasn't a lot of firebombing that impacted the place. That was really good. I mean, in terms of preserving the history. So Onomichi City I feel like I got really lucky because it's now like a Nippon Isan, or Nihon Isan, Japanese World Heritage City, or Japanese Heritage City, rather. And because of that, it brings on a lot of different people. And then we've got the cycling route and the sea, so a lot of things to actually do outside of, farming and
that was neat. I love it. Oh, well, thanks for sharing with us about your lifestyle here, and super interesting. Man. Just this, getting to meet different people living different lifestyles all over the world, and thanks for sharing, Tom.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Yeah.